Life doesn't come with a manual, and no one is immune to hardship. We can't control when the storms will hit, nor can we always predict how strong the winds will be. One minute everything is fine, and the next we're facing a struggle we never saw coming. That's the truth of life. It's unpredictable. Sometimes it feels like the world is throwing obstacle after obstacle our way, as if we're being tested beyond our limits. We've all faced moments where we felt hopeless, moments when the weight of our struggles seemed unbearable. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the betrayal of someone we trusted, financial troubles, or even our own internal battles, these struggles are real. They're raw, they hurt. And often they don't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason to why things happen the way they do. The world doesn't stop turning just because you're in pain. The reality is harsh, but it's also universal. Every person you meet is fighting some kind of battle, some you can see and many you can't. But here's the thing about struggles: they are not a reflection of your worth. They don't define who you are. The ugliness of life's challenges may cloud your vision in the moment, but they do not have the power to define your entire story. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair. That's the reality we have to face. And the sooner we acknowledge it, the sooner we can stop pretending that everything is always going to be perfect, or that we are supposed to have all the answers. Because no one does. What we can do, though, is choose to face the struggle head on. We can accept that life will throw curveballs, and sometimes it will knock us to our knees. But that's part of the journey. No one gets through life unscathed, and there's no shame in acknowledging that things are tough. It's part of being human. The key isn't to avoid the pain, but to lean into it, to understand that it's temporary, and to allow it to be part of our growth. Life's struggles don't discriminate. They come for everyone, but they don't last forever. One of the most profound truths about life is that no matter how ugly or difficult the situation, we always have a choice. You may not be able to control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. This is the most powerful tool we have: our ability to choose. And sometimes that choice isn't about making big, grand decisions. It's about making small, daily decisions that impact how we live, how we heal, and how we grow. When life throws its punches, it's easy to fall into a mindset of helplessness, to believe that we are victims of circumstances. It's easy to think that we have no say in the matter, that the outcome is out of our hands. But here's the truth: the situation may be ugly, but how you choose to deal with it can make all the difference. You can choose to stay stuck, to let the anger, the pain, the frustration consume you, or you can choose to move forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. You can choose to hold on to resentment, or you can choose to let it go, knowing that forgiveness is not a gift for the other person, but a gift for yourself. The power of choice lies in the fact that it's always with you. Even in moments of despair, you have the ability to decide what direction you'll take next. Life doesn't get to dictate your next move you do. When you embrace this truth, you take back the reins of your own life. No matter how many times you've been knocked down, you always have the choice to rise again. Even in the face of fear, doubt, or uncertainty, you can choose courage. You can choose hope. Sometimes the hardest choice is simply deciding not to give up. It's deciding to get up one more time when you feel like you've reached your breaking point. But every time you make that choice, every time you decide to keep going, you grow stronger. It's in the moments of struggle, when you feel you have no energy left, that you learn just how powerful your choices really are. Every time you choose to keep fighting, to keep living, you rewrite your own narrative. The power of choice also means that we have the ability to shape our own outlook. We can choose to focus on what's wrong in our lives, or we can choose to focus on what's right. We can choose to see ourselves as victims, or we can choose to see ourselves as survivors. We can choose to be bitter about our past, or we can choose to learn from it and grow. Our mindset is a choice. Our perspective is a choice. And those choices can transform everything about our lives. At its core, the power of choice is a recognition that we are not passive observers of our lives, but active participants. Even when we feel powerless, even when it feels like life is spinning out of control, we still have the power to choose. The world can change around us, but as long as we remember that we have the final say in how we respond, we retain our power. We may not be able to change the past, and we can't always control the future, but we can always choose how we show up today. It's easy to see trials as something to be avoided, something that we fear or dread. When life presents us with challenges, we often wish we could escape them. or at the very least, fast forward through the pain. We look at difficult situations and think, this is too much. How will I ever get through this? And the truth is, we don't always have the answers in those moments. We can't always see the purpose behind the struggle when we're in the thick of it. But if there's one thing that's certain, is that trials have a way of transforming us whether we're ready for it or not. When you're going through something difficult, it feels like the world is closing in and you can't see beyond the pain. But I want you to know that these tough moments are never wasted. They don't come to defeat you, they come to shape you. Think about the person you were before the storm hit. Were you the same person you are now? Probably not. In the midst of the struggle, you were being molded. You may have been broken, but in that breaking, you were also being made new. The transformation that happens during trials is often slow, subtle, and at times even painful. The person you become after a hardship may not be recognizable to you in the beginning. You may look in the mirror and wonder where the old version of yourself went. And that's okay. Because what's happening beneath the surface is a necessary evolution. The challenges you face are refining you, stripping away the things you don't need, and helping you uncover the strength and resilience that was always there, but maybe you never had to tap into before. When you're tested, you're forced to confront parts of yourself you might have ignored or buried. You're forced to see where you're weak, where you're scared, where you still need to grow. But instead of breaking you, those tests are actually building you. You're learning what you're made of. You're learning what you can endure, what you can survive. You're learning what you can let go of, and more importantly, what you can hold on to. It's often in the trial that we discover our true power. Before facing hardship, we might have thought we were doing okay, just getting by. But when life knocks us down, we have a choice. We can stay down or we can rise. And when we rise, when we refuse to stay down, when we refuse to let the situation define us, that's when we experience transformation. There's a beauty in being tested. It's not that we seek out hardship, but we learn through it. We grow in ways we didn't know we could. We develop a depth of character that couldn't have been forged through ease and comfort. Without struggle, there's no strength. Without pressure, there's no diamond. The trials you face are the very thing that refine you, that turn you into the person you're meant to become. They teach you patience, resilience, perseverance, and often humility. But transformation through trials isn't just about enduring, it's about choosing to learn. It's about looking at every hardship and asking yourself, what am I meant to gain from this? It's about choosing not to let the pain harden you, but to let it teach you. Life's hardest moments are the most fertile ground for growth. When you're pushed to your limits, you start to realize that you're capable of more than you thought possible. And that realization, that's where your transformation begins. It's also important to recognize that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. The lessons you're learning now may not make sense in the moment. But little by little, the pieces start to fall into place. The person you become through your trials might not be visible immediately, but rest assured, the change is happening. And while it may seem painful at times, the fruit that comes from it is worth the wait. Vulnerability is often viewed as a weakness in our society. We're taught from a young age to be strong, to hold it together, to never let anyone see us sweat. We are conditioned to hide our struggles, to keep our emotions tucked away, and to put on a brave face even when we're falling apart on the inside. There's this belief that if we show our pain, our fear, or our sadness, we're somehow less than, somehow incapable or unworthy. But let me tell you something important. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's actually one of the greatest sources of strength you have. When we open ourselves up, when we allow ourselves to be seen for who we really are, we step into a power that cannot be replicated by any mask or facade. It's not easy, though. Being vulnerable means being exposed. It means allowing others to see the parts of us that are raw, that are tender, that might still be healing. It means opening ourselves up to the possibility of rejection, judgment, and pain. But it's in that openness, that honesty with ourselves and others, that we find true connection and true healing. The reality is that vulnerability is a bridge that connects us to one another. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. We create space for authentic relationships where people can be real, not perfect. Vulnerability fosters empathy. When you share your struggles, your flaws, and your fears, it invites others to share theirs as well. And in that shared space, we find our common humanity. We realize that we're not alone in our pain, and that in itself is a powerful kind of relief. But there's more to vulnerability than just connecting with others. There's a deep transformative power in being vulnerable with ourselves. When you allow yourself to acknowledge the hurt, the disappointment, or the fear you're carrying, you begin the healing process. Too often, we try to push those feelings down, to ignore them, to convince ourselves that we're fine when we're really not. But pretending doesn't heal anything, it only prolongs the pain. True healing happens when you face those feelings head on, when you stop running from the discomfort and allow yourself to feel it fully. Only then can you begin to release it. Embracing vulnerability also means giving ourselves permission to be imperfect. We live in a world that constantly pressures us to be flawless, to be always on top of our game, to present the best version of ourselves at all times. But perfection is a lie. No one is perfect. Everyone has a story, everyone has scars, and everyone has moments where they feel lost or broken. When we embrace our imperfections, we stop hiding from our truth. We stop trying to live up to unrealistic standards and start living authentically in a way that honors who we truly are. It's also important to understand that vulnerability doesn't mean weakness, it means courage. It takes tremendous strength to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you're struggling, or that you need help. It's easy to pretend we're fine, to put up walls, to stay closed off from the world. But it takes real courage to let those walls down, to be open, to ask for support, and to admit that we're not okay. It takes courage to say, I'm hurt, I'm scared, I don't know what comes next, and still stand tall in that truth. Vulnerability requires us to show up in our most authentic form, even when we don't have all the answers, even when we're uncertain about what lies ahead. The beauty of vulnerability is that it invites growth. When we open ourselves up, we open the door to change. By allowing ourselves to feel, to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, we create the space for personal growth. When we face our vulnerabilities, we learn from them. We discover new things about ourselves, we heal old wounds, and we gain strength from the very things that once threatened to break us. Vulnerability gives us the opportunity to evolve, to expand beyond our current limitations, and to become a better version of ourselves, one that is more compassionate, more resilient, and more real. Moreover, embracing vulnerability teaches us self-compassion. We are often our harshest critics, holding ourselves to impossible standards and beating ourselves up when we fall short. But when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give ourselves grace. We acknowledge that we are not perfect, that we are allowed to struggle, and that we deserve the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a friend. We stop shaming ourselves for being human and begin to nurture the parts of us that need healing. This is the foundation of self-love, accepting ourselves as we are, flaws and all, and allowing ourselves to grow at our own pace. There is also an incredible freedom that comes with embracing vulnerability. When we stop pretending to be something we're not, we give ourselves the freedom to just be. We no longer have to hide behind a mask or constantly perform for the approval of others. We can release the pressure of perfection and just exist as we are. In that freedom, we find peace. We find a sense of liberation from the societal expectations that try to define us. We can take off the armor and simply be ourselves, messy, imperfect, and beautiful in our own unique way. It's time we stop seeing vulnerability as something to be ashamed of. It's time we recognize it for the gift that it is, the gateway to deeper connection, stronger relationships, profound growth, and a life of authenticity. Embrace your vulnerability, because in doing so, you embrace the fullness of who you are, and that is where your true power lies. When life gets heavy and the world feels like it's spinning out of control, one of the most important things we can do is lean on our people. The journey through tough times is never meant to be a solo walk. And yet so many of us try to carry the weight of the world alone, convinced that we need to be strong, that we need to prove something, or that others don't have the capacity to understand our pain. We tell ourselves, I don't want to burden anyone, or I can handle this on my own, but the truth is, we weren't meant to do this by ourselves. Our connections with others are one of the greatest sources of strength we have. The people around us, our family, friends, mentors, or even our communities are there for a reason. We often think of them as being part of the good times, the celebrations, and the moments of joy. But they are just as crucial when the storm clouds roll in, when the weight of our struggles feels unbearable. It's in the tough moments that the true power of our relationships reveals itself. When we lean on our people, we're not just asking for help, we're allowing ourselves to be supported in a way that restores us. Human beings are not islands, we're interconnected, and there's power in that. Each person we have in our lives brings with them a unique kind of strength, wisdom, and perspective. Sometimes we don't even realize the full extent of what they can offer until we reach out. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a demonstration of trust. It says, I believe you have something to offer me, something that will help me navigate this difficult time. The act of leaning on others is also an act of vulnerability. It requires us to let down the walls we've built around ourselves, to stop pretending that we have it all together, and to allow someone else to see the parts of us that are broken or afraid. This can be incredibly uncomfortable, but it's also where healing begins. By being open with our people, we give them permission to be open with us in return. It creates a shared space of honesty where we no longer have to wear masks or pretend to be something we're not. In these moments of vulnerability, we realize that we are not alone in our pain, that others have their own struggles, and that together we can face anything. It's also important to remember that leaning on our people doesn't mean simply asking for emotional support. It can also mean asking for practical help. Sometimes the weight of a situation isn't just emotional, it's physical, mental, or financial. Maybe you need someone to help take care of your children, to cook a meal, or to just sit with you in silence. There's no shame in asking for what you need. Real relationships are about mutual care, about giving and receiving support in the ways that are necessary for both people to thrive. We don't have to carry the burden alone because the people around us want to help, even if they don't always know how. It's our job to let them in, to be clear about our needs, and to trust that they want to be there for us. One of the most beautiful aspects of leaning on your people is the sense of shared responsibility. In community, no one has to bear the weight alone. When we lean on those we trust, they lean on us in return. It's a reciprocal relationship that strengthens both parties. The support we receive from others doesn't just alleviate our burdens, it empowers us to keep going, to stay strong, to show up for ourselves and others in ways we never thought possible. It's in the give and take of these relationships that we find our resilience. Additionally, leaning on our people teaches us the value of patience and grace both for ourselves and others. When we're going through something difficult, we can often be hard on ourselves. We might feel like we should be handling things better, or like we should have all the answers. But by leaning on others, we allow ourselves the space to be human, to struggle, and to need help. And we extend that same grace to others when they face their own challenges. We learn that we don't have to have everything figured out, that it's okay to need a little extra support, and that asking for help doesn't make us any less capable. In fact, it makes us more capable because it opens us up to the strength and resources of the people around us. The people we lean on also remind us of the value of perspective. When we're in the midst of our own struggles, it's easy to become consumed by our emotions, to see the world through a lens of pain and fear. But sometimes the perspective of others can offer us a much needed shift in how we view the situation. A friend, a family member, or a mentor might see things from a different angle, one that we couldn't see when we were in the thick of it. They might offer advice, encouragement, or just a listening ear that helps us process our emotions and find clarity. This external perspective helps us regain our balance and find the strength to keep moving forward. Sometimes leaning on your people also means simply being with them even without words. There's incredible power in shared presence. When we're struggling, we don't always need someone to solve our problems. Often just knowing that someone is there holding space for us, sitting in silence with us, or offering a comforting touch can be enough. We all need to know that we're seen, that we're heard, and that we're not alone in our pain. When we lean on our people, we're reminded that we are worthy of support, worthy of love, and worthy of care, even when we feel like we're at our lowest point. The strength in leaning on others is not just in receiving help, it's in the trust, the mutual care, and the shared vulnerability that make us all stronger. It's in allowing our people to show up for us just as we would show up for them when they need it most. There is a collective power in community that is far greater than anything we can handle alone. And when we open ourselves up to receiving that support, we discover a kind of resilience that can only be built through connection. Faith and hope are not just words we throw around during difficult times. They are powerful forces that shape our lives, especially when we find ourselves in the middle of hardship. They're not merely abstract concepts or wishful thinking. Faith and hope are the lifelines that keep us afloat when everything else seems to be sinking. They don't promise an easy road, nor do they guarantee an immediate fix to our problems. What they do promise is the strength to endure, the courage to keep moving forward, and the belief that something better lies ahead, even when we can't yet see it. Faith is often misunderstood. It's not about knowing exactly how things will turn out or having a clear blueprint of the future. Faith is about trusting. even when the path ahead is uncertain. It's about choosing to believe in something greater than the circumstances we face, something that transcends the immediate pain or struggle. It's the deep-rooted conviction that no matter how dark the moment, there is purpose, there is meaning, and there is a divine timing that will unfold, even if we don't understand it in the moment. In times of difficulty, faith is the ability to stand firm even when the ground beneath us feels unstable. It's the ability to believe that while the storm may rage, we are not alone in it. Faith is not the absence of fear or doubt, rather, it's the act of choosing to believe in spite of them. It's the strength to keep going even when we feel weak, to move forward even when we're unsure of the next step. Faith gives us the courage to keep showing up each day, knowing that we are not defined by our current circumstances, but by what we believe is possible. Hope, on the other hand, is the fuel that keeps our faith alive. While faith gives us the foundation to stand, hope gives us the energy to keep moving forward. Hope is that quiet but powerful voice that whispers there is more to come. It's the belief that our current struggle is not the end of the story, that the pain we're experiencing will not last forever, and that there are better days ahead. Hope doesn't ask us to deny our pain or pretend that everything is fine. Instead, hope invites us to acknowledge the pain while still holding on to the belief that it won't last, that it has a purpose, and that we can grow through it. Hope allows us to imagine a future that's brighter than today, even when today feels impossible to bear. It's the light at the end of the tunnel that helps us keep walking through the darkness. Hope is the ability to see possibilities beyond our present reality. Even when our circumstances seem bleak, hope helps us look toward the horizon and say, I believe that things will get better. I believe there is something good coming my way. I believe I will heal. I believe I will overcome this. Faith and hope are not always easy to maintain. Life has a way of challenging both, testing our limits and making us question everything we believe. Sometimes it feels like our prayers go unanswered, like our efforts are in vain, or like our dreams are too far out of reach. In those moments, it's easy to lose sight of faith and hope, but that's when they matter the most. Faith isn't tested when everything is going well, it's tested when everything seems to be falling apart. Hope isn't needed when things are perfect, it's needed when things feel hopeless. These two forces, faith and hope, are what carry us through those moments, what help us rise when the world tries to keep us down. What makes faith and hope so transformative is that they're not reliant on external circumstances. They don't depend on the situation being perfect or the outcome being guaranteed. Instead, they come from within. Faith is rooted in an internal trust, the knowing that we are supported by a force greater than ourselves, whether we call it God, the universe, or something else. Hope is the belief in possibility and the conviction that our best days are ahead of us. When we place our faith and hope in something outside of our immediate situation, we allow ourselves to transcend the limitations of our current reality.